Hey guys, welcome to Conrad in the Making. So as many of you may know, the Republican health care bill that was meant to replace Obamacare was pulled from the floor. So what does this mean for us? Well, hey, let's talk about it in this one. So what happened to the bill? Well, Paul Ryan, he apparently went to go rally some people to get some votes up, and turns out that he didn't have enough votes from his own party to pass it through the House, the first step that it needed. So what he did, he went to go visit President Trump at the White House and said, hey, I think we need to pull this bill because it's just not working. And so apparently Republicans are going to try to move on to tax reform. They say they're still going to look into maybe bipartisan support with the bill, but ultimately it looks like Obamacare is here to stay for a while. What that means for us is that a lot of the parts that Republicans wanted to do away with Obamacare is that that's going to stay in place. As far as the individual mandate, you will still be required to purchase healthcare, or you will be given a penalty on your taxes. And also the essential health benefits that requires insurance companies to cover certain standards of care will also still be in place. I wanted to wait a few weeks before uploading a response to the failure of the bill in the House because I wanted to research and really learn about why didn't this bill go through? What was the issue on the Republican side? And, what was the discrepancies between the parties? And ultimately what I learned is healthcare reform is really, really hard. I mean, you have to think, politicians have to be accountable to their constituents. Whenever their constituents are saying they need lower premiums, they need lower deductibles, politicians are going in there trying to say that they can get both, and they're mutually exclusive. If you have higher premiums, you're going to have lower deductibles, but if you have lower premiums, you're going to have higher deductibles. You can't have both. And so that's why it seems to be really difficult, because you have so many people that want certain things, and whenever they're asking their congressmen and their senators to go for these things in healthcare reform, you just can't get all of them in one basket. This really emphasized the importance for trade-offs in healthcare reform. You have to think that if you're a party or you're a person that wants healthcare for the majority of Americans, for all of Americans to be available, you have to know that government spending will increase, because that's just the fact of the matter it is. And so whenever you hear a politician saying, hey, we're going to have more people insured, we're going to have lower government spending and all this, you have to understand that they are lying, because that just simply cannot happen. Why is this important? Well, we as the public, as the populations that reside in and outside of healthcare, that use it, they're around it, we have to understand that our education of it is important. For us to make an educated decision about what we want our healthcare to look like in America, we have to understand that, hey, we can't get everything at once. We have to pick a side, and we have to stick to it, and we have to deal with the trade-offs accordingly. So ultimately, where does our government stand as far as our politicians? Well, on the Democratic side, a lot of people tend to believe that Democrats think that healthcare should be universal, should be an option to all people, regardless of your socioeconomic status, regardless of your age in America. Republicans, on the other hand, they emphasize the importance of the market of healthcare. They believe that we shouldn't mandate for everyone to get it. We shouldn't require everyone to get it, but we should create a market that is good enough to where young people would want to be incentivized to buy it. Ultimately, this is a big reason why the Republicans failed to connect with other party members within their own party about this bill, why they didn't have the votes to pass it through, because in the House, the Republicans currently control the majority. So the reason why is because the American Health Care Act still had a lot of attributes that looked a lot like Obamacare. So this particular group in the Republican Party, called the House Freedom Caucus, they essentially said, hey, you need to do away with this. We're not creating the market. We're still essentially trying to make people buy it, but we're not incentivizing people to go out and buy it themselves. So how could this bill be fixed? Well, number one problem is you have to find a way for young people to want to buy healthcare, right? Obamacare does this through the individual mandate where you are required to buy it, and Republicans, on the other hand, are probably trying to look for a way to make the market better to where young people are incentivized to buy it but aren't required to. A lot of people that don't like Obamacare, what they're saying, a lot of their rhetoric that they're using is that they say, well, I don't want to pay for someone else's insurance. I want to pay for my own insurance. But ultimately, that's what healthcare insurance is. It pools the money of the healthy people and gives it to the sick people to afford their care, so that in turn, whenever they get sick, as in the younger people, then they will have that care available to them. Another thing the government can do is, in a lot of other countries, governments will go to pharmaceutical companies, will go to healthcare equipment companies, and they will go to them and say, all right, between you three hip replacement companies that create this equipment, what I need you to do is come up with a product that has the highest quality for the cheapest cost, and our government will purchase all of this equipment from you to be sold to the public. So what they're doing is that they're incentivizing competition between the companies so that healthcare costs can be lower. The need for healthcare reform in America is huge. Ultimately, I think as a country, we pay about 18% of our GDP towards healthcare, and we don't even get that much out of it, whereas other countries will pay around 10 to 12% of their global domestic product towards healthcare. So my question to you is, what should the Republican Party do? Where should they go towards their next policy for healthcare? Should they try to reform it? You know, honestly, a lot of people are coming home towards Easter, going to town hall meetings, and they're saying to their constituents, yeah, we're still working on it, you know, we're gathering support, we're writing up a new bill, but honestly, they have to say that because their constituents are, you know, holding them accountable. So what should Republicans do? Should they give up, you know, move towards tax reform and try again another time, or should they reform this bill to something slightly different to what it was? So that's my question for you. Throw it in the comments if you get a chance. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to reading them and getting back to you with them. I hope this video was helpful. There's a lot of exciting news in the politics of healthcare. You know, a lot of things that need to be worked out. Some of it gets a bit confusing, so I hope I was able to clear it up for you a little bit. Ultimately, you know, there's going to be more news to come, and I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on that. I'm Conrad. I'm in the making, and I'll see you in the next one.